In this video, I want to talk with you about how to heal from mold toxicity. So right now I have several clients who were having all these mysterious symptoms going on, who came to me and then turns out they had mold toxicity that we are working through together right now and getting them back on track. I also have dealt with mold toxicity and have healed myself. And in this video, I'm going to share with you some of the main symptoms so you know, or you can start to dig into if mold toxicity is what's causing a lot of your symptoms. I'm also going to talk to you about some steps you can start taking to heal from that, the things that I do with clients, and then I'm actually going to show you some of the testing you can do that are at-home tests that you can do to find out if you have mold toxicity, what type of mold toxicity you have. For years, I was struggling with all these super weird symptoms. I had extreme chronic fatigue. I had brain fog. I was having these weird issues when I was sleeping where I would wake up in the middle of the night and my heart was just racing and pounding. I would get weird vertigo and dizzy spells. Another thing that was happening is my eyes were really red and they just looked super irritated. I was flush. I'll see if I can find you guys a picture. Like my cheeks were so pink and bright red. It wasn't rosacea. I was also having these recurring gut infections, candida, yeast, really bad anxiety. And I had gone to all of my doctors. I just knew something was off. And one of the doctors told me that it was stress. And that's why I was waking up in the middle of the night with heart palpitations and these crazy adrenaline rushes, even though I didn't feel like it was stress. And then another doctor was telling me I was having adrenal fatigue because I was just stressed with life, and that's just part of aging. All these doctors kept telling me all these random things. Now, keep in mind, I'm an integrative health coach, nutrition coach, strength and conditioning, fitness, hormone health coach. So I understand how the body works. So I knew I'm eating clean, I'm exercising, I'm keeping my stress managed. This doesn't really make any sense. And nobody could really figure out anything of what was going on. The other thing I had too was I was getting really bad congestion and allergies and headaches, and then all these random skin rashes. What ended up happening is I saw all these different doctors. I saw a hormone doctor to see if it was my hormones because I was just so fatigued and having all these issues. I saw a primary care who was telling me that it was long COVID or it was anxiety and all these other things, but nothing really was clicking or making sense. Finally, through my own experience and my own just education with integrative health, I started doing some digging and researching and started uncovering a lot of things that I had going on with mold toxicity. And I ordered a test, did the urine test, and it came back that I did have 2 species of mold toxicity. I will show you those test results so you can see what they look like. I will also put a link in the description. If you want to order the test, you can do it at home. See if you have mold toxicity. I'll do that as well. But essentially what happened is I had 2 different types of mold toxicity, ochratoxin A and citrinin, and then a little bit of gilatoxin too. I had moved into a new apartment. I did not see visible signs of mold anywhere, which is one of the things we're going to talk about that's really hard. But I just started, all of my symptoms started when I lived in this apartment. And I would notice when I would leave my house or my apartment, I would feel a little bit better. And then I would go home, and then all of a sudden, the headaches, the fatigue, the dizziness, the red eyes, the crazy runny nose would happen, and then I would leave. And so I knew something was going on. And as it turned out, this apartment had behind the drywall not only black mold, but it also had been experiencing a roof leak for a few years. That mold had built up, you just couldn't see it. So this is one of the important things with mold. Mold is something that is airborne. So the spores you breathe in. It's not that it touches you. It's not if you're ingesting it. You are inhaling it. It gets into your sinuses and it starts to do something called colonizing, where essentially it gets stuck in your sinuses. It starts to build up in your gut. And then what we're going to break down here is the longer term effects, which is what I was experiencing and a lot of my clients experience prior to getting it out of their system, is you start having neurotoxicity. So with the brain and inflammation, you start having liver and kidney stuff going on too. So millions of people are exposed to mold every day and don't even realize it. And sometimes having mold toxicity can mimic autoimmune disease, mental illness, aging, hormone imbalances, and sleep issues. So I'm going to break down what mold toxicity is, how it impacts the brain and the body, and then common symptoms along with steps you can do now to start healing. So what exactly is mold toxicity? So for some people, when they're around mold, the only thing that happens to them is they'll start sneezing, they get a runny nose, and they'll get itchy eyes. That's not necessarily toxicity, that is you reacting to it. Mold colonization is where spores actually live inside the body, in sinuses, the gut, the lungs, creating an ongoing internal exposure to mold. So for some people, it's only a problem when they're in a moldy environment. Other people, they inhale that mold and then it stays internally in the body, even if they're outside the moldy environment, because the body is having a hard time detoxing it. So the real issue with all of this is something called mycotoxin poisoning. So mold releases things called mycotoxins. These are tiny toxic chemicals that damage your cells. It damages your detox pathways and it completely throws off your immune system. So for example, like I have one client right now who mold was going on in her body, then she got COVID. Because COVID wreaked havoc on everybody's immune system, it made it really impossible for her body to be able to detox the mold. So for what I'm finding and a lot of the clients that I'm working with is COVID kind of triggered this because the immune system, autoimmune stuff starts flaring up that the body can't keep up with all this, and mold causes problems with your detox pathways in your liver, your kidneys, and your gut. That's one of the things is like toxicity is when you have it stuck in your system. Some of the common toxic molds are black mold. That one's pretty self-explanatory. It's infamous for neurological problems and respiratory problems, breathing problems. Um, Aspergillus is another type of mold species. It produces things like aflatoxins. These are all linked to liver issues, which what I have seen is people who have elevated liver enzymes tend to also have underlying mold issues as well. So that's another one. We have penicillin, which can produce toxins that affect the kidneys and the lungs. So one of the symptoms that can show up with mold toxicity is frequent urination and always feel you're drinking water, drinking water, drinking water, but you're peeing like crazy. And it's like you're always having to go to the bathroom, but you always feel dehydrated. Part of that is because mold toxicity throws off the kidneys and the body's ability to regulate your electrolyte balance. So you lose tons of sodium. So your electrolytes are getting completely flushed out, but you keep drinking water. And then it's just this constant terrible cycle that you're never actually feeling hydrated. And it's because mold affects your gut, your liver, your kidneys, your brain, your sinuses. It affects everything. And I mean, going through it, like I do not wish mold toxicity on anybody because it will make you, it feels kind of like you have mono because of the fatigue that is so hard, but then it also feels like you have like the worst sinus infections, but you're reactive to every kind of food because you have an overactive immune system. It screws up your sleep. It does a lot. So those are the common types of toxic molds. So think of mold toxicity kind of the way you would think of invisible secondhand smoke. It's not that you necessarily see it, like it's not that you walk into a house and then immediately you see black mold on there, but it builds up and you're breathing it in and it damages your health over time. So The way that mold affects the brain and the body is the brain, which is where a lot of things start to like people start to get creeped out by this because of neural inflammation, which is just neural inflammation is just inflammation in the brain. Because mycotoxins, remember, mold releases mycotoxins. Mycotoxins cross the blood-brain barrier, create inflammation, and then you start experiencing things like vertigo, memory issues, brain fog. I see a lot of people who get intrusive thoughts, like these scary, crazy, weird thoughts that they can't figure out where it's coming from. Panic attacks, anxiety attacks, these constant like pounding headaches. All that stuff is neuroinflammation and a lot of times can be linked back to mold. So it's one of the ways it affects the brain. The other part of the brain that it affects is something called your limbic system. So your limbic system gets stuck in this fight or flight response, leading to anxiety, mood swings, hypersensitivity to light, noise, external stimulus. And part of the reason being is because your limbic system, it's not doing anything wrong. When you have something toxic in the brain, your limbic system doesn't know whether that's internal or external. So it puts you in a fight or flight response because it is signaling to you, hey, there's danger, there's something toxic here. You need to get up and get out, as in get out of your house, not recognizing that it's actually an internal environment in your brain. So that happens a lot. You become very hypersensitive to like noise, light, sound, heat, stimulus, things like those things because the limbic system is stuck in fight or flight. So a lot of this leads to people having anxiety and panic attacks that they can't really explain. The other thing with the brain that it affects is your neurotransmitter. So mold can definitely disrupt serotonin and dopamine balance, which can contribute to depression, those weird thoughts we talked about, insomnia and sleep issues. That's part of it too, is when you go to bed tonight. So a lot of people who have had mold issues, the thing they have the hardest time with is the sleep because it's like you wake up in a panic, like your heart's just racing or like this adrenaline rush and you just sit up straight out of bed and you don't know what's going on. There's a couple reasons for that other than all this stuff we talked about with the inflammation, but because mold affects the brain and neurotransmitters, it also affects melatonin. So your brain detoxes at night. Mold affects melatonin, which is responsible for sleep, but also melatonin is actually an antioxidant for your brain. So when you got something in there and your brain's trying to detox it, and then it's triggering your limbic system of like, oh my God, fight or flight, you got to get out. That's what happens. So that's a common thing that I see. With other parts, so your immune system, mold and mycotoxins tend to suppress the immune system, making chronic infections like candida overgrowth, which manifests in a lot of ways with the gut. With women, a lot of times it's these recurring yeast infections, vaginosis, all these problems, or chronic infections like Lyme or Epstein-Barr. Like a Epstein-Barr EBV is just mono. A lot of times because mold suppresses the immune system, it makes these other chronic infections really hard to get rid of because the immune system just can't function properly. It also affects hormones. So this is a huge thing where we have like a little bit of a misdiagnosis that you see with doctors because mycotoxins stress out your adrenal glands, which can cause extreme fatigue and low cortisol output. So this is what happened to me. I'll show you my test results when I was having some of these symptoms, and you can see where my adrenal glands and some of my hormones are just starting to go flatline because the adrenals are exhausted from trying to fight this constant infection. They also can interfere with your thyroid and sex hormones too. But a lot of times this gets misdiagnosed because if traditional doctors, you're describing your symptoms and they run a hormone report and then they're just like, oh, you just have adrenal fatigue. But for you, you're like, why would I have adrenal fatigue though? Like I'm eating clean, I'm exercising, I'm doing my vitamins and supplements, like I'm sleeping. I don't feel stressed or burned out. It can get misdiagnosed because mold, chronic infections will drain your adrenals and mimic similar things to adrenal fatigue. The other thing is your detox pathway. So your liver is a huge detox pathway. That's why I said earlier, some of these show up as elevated liver enzymes, but liver and the bile from your gallbladder. So bile helps with flushing out a lot of toxins when these detox pathways are suppressed. So remember, your liver filters out toxins, it filters out excess hormones, it filters out viruses, like it is your detox pathway. So when it gets suppressed and it's trying to keep up with the stuff that it's got going on regularly, and the bile is slowing down from your gallbladder, these toxins just keep recycling in your bloodstream and in your cells instead of getting excreted from the body. Which leads to the other part of detox is gut issues. You end up with gut permeability, leaky gut, and then you just have systematic inflammation, which it's this whole cycle. And I mean, I'm speaking to all this with like so much compassion because I went through so much of this and it's so hard. For me, some of the main symptoms that I had, and I'm just sharing this in case any of this sounds familiar and you've had this like mysterious chronic thing that nobody's able to figure out, was I had the sleep thing going on where, I mean, I was constantly waking up. My heart is going a million miles a minute. I couldn't figure out like what was going on and I couldn't go back to sleep. It was terrible. I had that. I had vertigo really bad where I would like wake up in the morning and then I would go to get out of bed and I almost felt like I was drunk, but I wasn't drinking anything. Like I just felt like I had to move really slow. I was very pink. My face was very flushed. A lot of that is histamine results. My chest was always very flushed. I was constantly having anxiety, shortness of breath, but not anything that was like explainable. It would just like happen. And I'm like trying to talk to somebody and I'm like, I don't know why I feel like I can't breathe. I don't know what's going on. Some of this stuff with hormones, like I said, it was showing up as adrenal fatigue, panic attacks out of the blue for no reason. And then I was hyper reactive to almost every food. Like I did a food sensitivity test and I had like 30 things that I was reactive to, which if you ever do a food sensitivity test, if you have more than a few things on there, that is less about food sensitivity and more about there's something going on with your gut and the bigger picture. So those were all of my things. That's typically what I see in a lot of the clients that I work with that are dealing with mold toxicity is the sensitivity. Some of these things can overlap with an underlying thing like Lyme, like EBV, POTS. They get diagnosed with POTS a lot. And that's why it's often misleading and you're not really finding any solution because one thing is just triggering everything. So how I healed mold toxicity and some of the things that you can do and what I do with clients to kind of help you get over that hump is number one, you got to get out of the environment. So for me, I started feeling better when I left the house. So, and I noticed because I would go back and I'm like, oh man, I'm dizzy again. I feel off. I'm exhausted. Like everything is weird. Getting out of that environment is gonna be the first step. So you can start all these protocols, but if you are still in the environment, you are still breathing in all those mold spores, all those toxins, and then your body has to work really hard to try to get rid of it. So number one for everybody is you gotta get out of the environment. Even if that means you have to like terminate a lease, you gotta move out of your house at least for a while, remediate it, whatever you need to do. The part of that though is because mold toxins are airborne, anything that is porous can start to take in a lot of those mold toxins. So cloth, curtains, blankets, sofas, papers, washcloths, like anything, all that soaks up mycotoxins, unfortunately. So like I've heard crazy stories where people literally have to leave everything, leave their house, and just go move somewhere totally new and start all over. I realize that is very financially costly. So the other thing you can do is you remediate where you move out, and then you have a certified mold company come in and clear everything, clean everything. There's different companies that have products that you can wash your clothes with to try and get rid of it. Different like solutions you can do to get rid of it. So that's another thing too. Some common places that I find mold in that you don't necessarily see is number one, if there's ever been a roof leak and it's not been like properly repaired. Number two, front load washers. The ones that load in the front, if you look around there, because water just sits there, and especially if you don't close that, or I mean, keep it open so it can dry, mold builds up in there. Your car, showers, underneath sinks. You can also have somebody come in to test using, they check behind like your fixtures, your electrical circuits. They'll check the air. But a lot of those, they're all different. And I'm going to go through these in a second and tell you where they come from. So if you take one of the tests, and like I said, I'll put the description in the link in the description so you can order that test at home if you want to check. But each one is found in something different. So the ones that I had, ochratoxin A, citrinin, and gilatoxin, mine came from water damaged buildings. That's probably the biggest one, is most people are getting it from water damage within their work, within their home, within their car, those different environments that just aren't being properly cleaned. That was the first turning point, was I had to leave the space that I was breathing in all the mycotoxins and mold. The second piece of this, and this is the part that is very individual, because some people start a mold detox protocol and they are hypersensitive. So I'm going to give you some steps. I don't like giving you everything because it is very individualized. So I'm going to share with you what I did. But you have to be careful with this, because when you start to detox mold out of the body, it does fight back. So me, I am a very like type A, like let's just get this done and get it over with. You can't do that with this, because when you start to pull out mold out of the body and the body starts to detox it, those mycotoxins release a ton of histamines and inflammation. So when I first started my mold detox, I broke out in a rash all over, because it's releasing histamines as a defense mechanism to try and stay inside your body. So a couple things you can do. You start very gently, first off, so getting out of the moldy environment. You can start using binders. Now, there's different types of binders that go with different types of mold. So if you have ochratoxin A, there's a certain binder and a certain probiotic strain that goes with these. If you have aflatoxin, if you've got citrinin, if you got gilatoxin, that's why this is highly individualized, because it depends on the type you have, and it depends on the level of toxicity you have, but also on your pathways. So you can start using binders very gently and slowly, seeing how you do. So you typically have to build up to that. You can't just like, I'm taking all the binders and I'm just gonna like wing it. That's a terrible idea. If you do that, you will probably feel like you have mono and the flu and everything, and not be able to get out of bed. So please don't do that. But usually what I have people do is I suggest and recommend certain binders. The other thing that's really important that you can start with is just sweating. So if you can sit in a sauna and just sweat, or go outside and just sweat, your skin is one of the largest organs you have that absorbs and excretes a lot of things in the body that need to come out. So if you can start just sweating, all those toxins will start coming out through sweat. The other thing is drinking water, but with really quality electrolytes. So the more hydrated you are, the better your kidneys are going to be able to flush things out. However, you do have to make sure you have enough electrolytes in there so that you're not diluting every time you're drinking water, specifically sodium. Sodium, 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 because that is the way that the mold affects the kidneys, is it throws off that whole electrolyte sodium balance. So getting enough water with a lot of sodium, and y'all, I'm not talking about like a sprinkle of salt. I know some of y'all are like, oh, I put like a sprinkle of Himalayan sea salt. That's not gonna do it. I'm talking like a lot of salt. Like if you use things like LMNT, I get nothing for them. I'm not affiliated with them at all. But there's about 1,000 milligrams of sodium chloride in there, along with some potassium, some magnesium. That is a lot of salt. You're going to need the salt while you are flushing this out, and for a long time. Diet is kind of a given. I mean, honestly, like the cleaner you eat, the more organic you eat, the more you're taking toxic load off the body. So just in general, anti-inflammatory, lean proteins, healthy whole grains, healthy fats, nutrient dense food that is going to help rebuild your immune system. One of the biggest things I see, and I know this kind of doesn't make sense to a lot of people, but when you're detoxing from mold, your body needs enough protein for energy, but also for your liver to be able to flush that out. I have found people have the best results when they are getting enough protein to provide the amino acids and the nutrients the liver needs to flush out all those extra toxins. So that's going to be huge too. The other thing you can do is gut and immune support. So I'm always hesitant with this because you can trigger a reaction. So I would recommend if you start a mold detox protocol, before you start any of it, number one, test first to even see if that's an issue. And then number two, work with somebody who is mold literate and understands the process of this that can coach you through it and help you. I'm happy to do that. I'll put that in the description as well of ways you can work with me because this is very individualized and you have to be very careful with this. The other thing you can do to start working on the mold detox is good probiotics, taking care of your gut health, working on your detox pathway. So anything that helps improve the liver, kidneys, and gut are going to be really important. So that's obviously your food, obviously your water, cleaning up your gut health, things like milk thistle. A lot of people use NAC. I did not do very well with NAC, and this is why I'm not giving you like exact things because everybody is going to react differently. I did not do well at all with NAC. NAC gave me insomnia. It made me feel like I was on speed because it flushed things out too fast. That didn't work well for me. If you find that you are highly sensitive in this stuff, I would start with the very basics first of start sweating, cleaning up your nutrition, start using some electrolytes, clean up your gut health, start doing some meditation, some breath work to calm down that limbic system that's stuck in fight or flight. That was a big thing too. But the most important thing I can say about all of this is healing isn't going to happen fast. And I always tell every single one of my clients when we start together, I'm like, listen, I'm going to give you full transparency. I'm not going to promise you some quick fix or anything, whether it's mold, whether it's skin, hormone, fat loss, metabolic health. It doesn't matter what it is. I always say full transparency. This is going to take time. You're not going to heal in 30 days from something like mold toxicity. Some people, depending on the level of toxicity, can get over like most of it within 3 to 6 months. For me, it took me almost 2 years because what happens is if you take one of these mold tests, the mycotoxin test, and it shows up that you have trace amounts, that is showing you what your body is currently able to detox. Then when I actually started my detox protocol with nutrients, binder, sauna, and all that, I retested a year later and my numbers almost tripled, which at first scared me a little bit, but it's actually a good sign because it means the detox is pulling all of those mycotoxins out of your brain, out of your organs, your sinuses, your liver, your kidneys, your gut. So don't be surprised if at the start you may have trace amounts of mycotoxins or maybe not hardly any, and then you start your detox protocol and it is like off the charts like mine was. That's actually a good sign that it's working and it's pulling stuff out of your system that your body wasn't able to pull out. So give it time and be patient with this. So check out the lab results. Okay, so first thing I'll show you is this was my initial mold mycotoxin report. So when I was having all that like low cortisol, low hormones, all the symptoms that I described, I then took this test, which is the test that is in the description if you want to take it and see if you have it. And at first it came back. We have, where's it at? Okay, here we go. I was at 15 points for ochratoxin A. So you can see them in the abnormal range there. And then if I come back down, where's my citrinin? Okay, so citrinin, I'm borderline. I'm at 25 for multiple mold species. So this is showing just what my body was starting to flush out, but also why I was feeling the way that I was feeling. So here is what is interesting that I'm going to show you now. So when I started my mold detox protocol, and it had been about a year, it's taken me a second to pull this up. Hopefully you can see that. Okay. My numbers almost quadrupled, and I had a new one pop up. So my ochratoxin A that was at 15, 56 points. This is a year after starting my protocol. Then my citrinin that was at 25, 127 points. And then now I have this new one, this gliotoxin, that is 391 points. So what happened, and this is actually common, and this is actually a good thing, even though when you first see it, you're like, what the heck? Like, I thought I was getting it out. This is showing all the stuff, the mycotoxins that were stuck in my body, in my brain, in my lungs, my respiratory, my liver, my kidneys, my gut, that my body couldn't excrete. And then when I started the detox, so my body is flushing it out, this is all the stuff that is coming out of my body, which is crazy. So this is a year after doing this detox. And you can see on here how mycotoxins affect your body. When you take the test, it'll show you all this. So everything in bold black is what I had. Pretty much affects every system in the body. So you see it's neurotoxic for the ones that I had here, carcinogenic here, nephrotoxicity, all three of them, oxidative stress, immunotoxicity, that's the immune system, GI, that's the gut, I've got that one, reproductive, so that's all your hormones, and then hepatotoxicity. So it was affecting everything, which is why I felt terrible. So that's why this is so important to get it taken care of. So when you come down here on this test and you see your results, it'll also explain to you where they're coming from. So, like, if I go here where my ochratoxin A is, typically ochratoxin A in the United States is most oftenly found right here in the bottom, water damaged buildings, offices, and ventilation systems. So, like we talked about, there is a percentage that comes in poorly stored grain, so, like, really cheap, poorly, ground oatmeal, cereals, things like that, but for the most part, it's coming from water damaged buildings, so roof leak, mold leak, the stuff we talked about with your washer under the sink, that's ochratoxin A. And then it explains to you all the different systems in your body that it impacts. So then same thing if I did not have this one, but so if we go down to the other one, let's see. Citrinin. So this is the one that like I was at 25 and now I'm at 127. Same thing. Mostly found, it can be found in certain food supplements and other things too, like grains, cereals, all those things. But for the most part, right here, damp building materials. So wood, insulation, and drywall. Again, mold, water damage building. You're looking at the same thing. And then it tells you right here, like it induces inflammation. It's been linked to infertility, reduced sperm count, rates of miscarriage. It's carcinogenic. It's immunotoxic, like all the things that it affects. And then the other one that I had was this gliotoxin that wasn't even on my first one. So that just means my body wasn't even able to flush this one out. Same thing, it's been found in flooring and wallpaper in right here, water damaged buildings. And then it goes on to explain to you everything like that it can do with destruction of the immune system, neurotoxic, all those things. So that's what the test results look like. But like I said, this is a year after starting my detox protocol. But the interesting thing about this is even though this all came back so much higher, one, it's a positive thing because it means everything I'm doing is pulling all of that out of my system. But then the other part that I want to show you too is after starting the protocol, look at my, oh, hold on, let me share it. Look at my hormones now. Share. Okay. So if you remember this, my testosterone was at a 9. This is a year later. It's now at a 30. My estrogen and progesterone are back right in the normal range. If you remember, my cortisol was also at zero point 0.4. So barely hitting this baseline. It's moved up to zero point 0.7. Vitamin D is good. My thyroid is all good. Insulin, my inflammation is low. You can see though, everything is back in the green. This is so much better. So what that means is even though those numbers are much higher on the second mycotoxin report, now my kidneys, my hormones, my adrenal, my liver, my gut have all been offloaded, and those systems can go back to being healthy, functioning, and feeling better because they're not working overtime trying to get this out. This is why it's so important that if you do think you have mold toxicity, or you suspect you have mold toxicity, or you've been living in a moldy environment, working in a moldy environment, or your car is moldy, you need to get that out because this isn't something that you mess around with. This affects every system in your organ. So I just wanted to show you these tests so you can see what it looks like when you take the test. It's just a urine test. They ship it to you, you pee in a cup, or actually I think you pee on a strip, and then you ship it back, and then that's the report you get that shows it. You have to be careful though, because I actually have a couple clients who did the testing. It came back negative, but they were almost textbook mold toxicity. So they ended up doing home inspections. I had this happen with a couple people living in apartment complexes they moved into that had roof leaks that weren't repaired, and a couple people who were in homes. They had somebody because I was like, man, my gut is saying this is mold. And then they finally got a mold inspector to come, and they had like crazy amounts of mold all throughout the house. They just couldn't see it, which all that means is the reason it came up negative is because the body was having that hard of a time excreting any of it. And then once we started on a protocol, detox program for them, then it started showing up. They started feeling better and the body started healing. So I just wanted to show you this. That way you kind of have an idea, but also to show you how it takes time. That was a year of me doing it, but I am so much like night and day better. Like I don't have hardly any symptoms. The only time I get symptoms is if I walk into a moldy environment and my immune system like reacts. But other than that, I mean, I don't have the energy crashes. I don't have that sleep stuff anymore. I'm not like hypersensitive to things. So it's super important to heal your body and get it out, but also just to show you like your body will go back to being better once you give it what it needs to stop having to work so hard to heal this. But then the last part I do want to say is giving you a little bit of hope. Mold illness and mold toxicity, if you have any of the symptoms that I have been describing, those are very chronic things and can feel very hopeless and like you're never going to get better. And I totally understand that. Like I was going to so many doctors and nobody had any answers, but intuitively I knew something was going on. But you do recover, you do feel better, you do get stronger and your immune system gets stronger, but you have to be patient and you do have to do it the right way and don't rush through this. I hope you found this video helpful. I will put everything that I mentioned in the description. So if some of this sounded familiar and you're like, I think I might have mold toxicity, I will put the link to the test that you can order at home in the description. And then if you decide you do want help working through this, or you know somebody who needs help, I'll also put a link that you can book an integrative health call with me, and I'm happy to coach you through this, having been through it myself. But make sure you subscribe because I'm always coming out with more integrative health, nutrition, fitness, metabolic type videos like this to really help you feel good inside and out. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in other videos.